They say you can tell when something is about to go wrong. That there's a moment when the air itself changes, when your skin prickles and your gut whispers pay attention. I used to think that was nonsense. Until the night my sister disappeared. It started like any other Friday evening in late October, the kind where the sky turns to bruised violet over Maple Hollow, and the whole town smells faintly of rain and burnt leaves. I had just closed up the coffee shop where I worked. The Lantern, a cozy little place at the edge of Main Street, when I got her message. Meet me at the pier. 9:30. Don't tell Mom. No emojis. No explanation. Just that. For most people, that might have sounded like an ordinary text from a moody teenager. But with Leela, my 17-year-old sister, nothing was ever ordinary. She was the kind of girl who saw beauty in broken things. The way a streetlight flickered. The way cracked glass caught the moonlight. She collected lost things, bottle caps, old film reels, abandoned Polaroids she found at thrift stores. I used to tease her for it. Now I wish I hadn't. At 9:15, I parked near the boardwalk and walked the rest of the way. The pier stretched out into the black water like a skeleton. Waves whispered beneath the wood. Somewhere far off, a bell buoy clanged softly. The wind was sharp enough to sting. She wasn't there. I called her name once, twice. Only the ocean answered. I waited. 10 minutes. 15. I texted her. Leela, where are you? And watched the screen, willing those 3 dots to appear. They didn't. By 10:00, I was pacing. A couple passed by, holding hands, laughing about something trivial, and I hated them for a second. Hated how their world was still intact, while mine was quietly unraveling. At 10:23, I called her, straight to voicemail. At 10:24, I called again. At 10:25, the storm began. The first drops were cold needles against my cheeks. I ran to my car, drenched, heart hammering. I told myself she'd gone home, that she'd gotten bored of waiting, that this wasn't what it looked like. But deep down, a voice I didn't want to hear kept repeating, something's wrong. By the time I reached home, Mom was sitting at the kitchen table, still in her nurse's scrubs, her coffee gone cold. You're late, she said without looking up. Did you see Lula? The way she asked it, calm, almost casual, made my stomach twist. What do you mean? She texted me to meet her. I thought she was here. Mom looked up then, and her face changed. No, she told me she was with you. That's how it started. With a misunderstanding, a text message, a storm. And the sickening realization that my little sister wasn't where she was supposed to be. That she might never be again. The police came the next morning. Officer Danner, a man with tired eyes and a voice that sounded like he'd said, "Missing person," too many times in his life. He asked the usual questions. When did you last see her? Was she upset? Does she have a boyfriend? Did she ever talk about running away? I told him no, and I don't know. Because the truth was, lately, I hadn't known much about Leela at all. We used to be close, inseparable, even. I taught her how to drive. We'd stay up late watching bad horror movies and making popcorn with too much butter. But something had changed over the past few months. She'd started spending more time alone, sneaking out, locking her bedroom door. When I asked what was wrong, she'd just smile that secret smile and say, "You wouldn't understand, Maya. I thought it was just teenage drama. Turns out, it was something else entirely." 2 days later, they found her phone. It was lying in the sand beneath the pier, screen cracked, half buried. No footprints, no sign of struggle, no clue. The detective called it open investigation. Mom called it nightmare. I called it the moment everything stopped. Because after that, time didn't move normally anymore. The days blurred. The house became too quiet. Every ring of the phone made my pulse jump, and every night I dreamed of the ocean swallowing her whole. But here's the thing no one tells you about losing someone. The world doesn't stop for your grief. People still buy groceries. Dogs still bark. The mail still comes. You still have to get out of bed, even when the person you love most in the world might be lying somewhere cold and alone. A week after her disappearance, I went back to the pier. I don't even know why. Maybe I hoped she'd somehow be there, waiting, apologizing for scaring me. The air smelled of salt and rust. The tide was low. I stood at the end, staring at the black horizon. That's when I saw it. Something shiny wedged between the planks. It was a small, silver pendant, a half-moon shape. Leela's necklace. I remembered it instantly. I'd given it to her for her 16th birthday. She wore it every day, even in the shower. My hands were shaking as I picked it up. It wasn't just a clue. It was proof that she'd been there. Proof that something had happened. I called the detective that night. He said they'd look into it. But I could tell by his tone, they weren't looking hard enough. So I decided I would. That was the night I made a promise to myself. If no one else would find her, I would. No matter what it cost. Even if it meant finding things I didn't want to know. And God, did I find them? The morning after I found Leela's necklace, I couldn't sleep. I tried. God knows I tried. But my mind replayed the same image over and over. That silver half-moon glinting in the slats of the pier, as if it had been waiting for me to find it. By 5:30 a.m., I was sitting on the kitchen floor, coffee growing cold beside me, staring at the necklace on the counter. It was still damp from the ocean air, the chain tangled, a few grains of sand clinging to it. I hadn't told Mom yet. She'd barely spoken since the night Leela went missing. And I wasn't sure she could handle another reminder. The house felt too big without her laughter in it. Every creak, every sigh of wind against the window sounded like footsteps, like whispers. When Mom finally came downstairs, her eyes were swollen, not from sleep, but from exhaustion and quiet crying. She looked at me, then at the necklace. "Where did you find that?" "By the pier," I said softly. It was caught between the boards. She reached for it like it was holy, pressing it against her lips. "She never took it off," she murmured. "Never." I wanted to ask 1,000 questions, but I bit my tongue. I could see the fear in her eyes, not just that Leela was gone, but that maybe she didn't want to be found. Later that morning, Detective Danner came by again. His knock was firm, rehearsed, like a man who'd knocked on too many doors like ours. He sat at our kitchen table, jotting notes while I explained how I found the necklace. He listened carefully, but I could tell he wasn't convinced it meant much. "Could have come loose," he said, scratching something in his notepad. "Storm that night was bad. Maybe she dropped it. She never took it off." I repeated, louder than I meant to. "She wouldn't just drop it." He sighed. "Miss Walsh, I understand how hard this is." "No," I cut him off. "You don't." He didn't argue. Just closed his notebook, said they'd process the item for evidence, and left. But I could tell he didn't believe there was any evidence. Not the kind that mattered. That was the moment I decided I couldn't rely on the police anymore. If they weren't going to find my sister, I would. The first place I went was her room. I hadn't been inside since that night. Mom couldn't even open the door, said it hurt too much. But I needed to see it, to feel it. Her room was a mess, but in that familiar, lived-in way. Posters of indie bands on the walls, fairy lights tangled around the mirror. her sketchbook half open on the bed. The air smelled faintly of vanilla lotion and lavender shampoo. I ran my fingers across her desk, the wood smooth except for a small circle where a candle had melted down once. That was Leela, careless and perfect. I opened her drawers one by one. Makeup, old bracelets, a notebook full of lyrics and poems she never showed anyone. But it was what I found inside her nightstand that made me stop breathing. A black USB drive. It was taped beneath the drawer, almost hidden. If I hadn't been looking closely, I never would have seen it. I plugged it into my laptop, half expecting nothing, maybe old homework or downloaded songs. But there were two folders, one labeled Accuse, the other Hollow, both password protected. I stared at them for a long time, heartbeat heavy in my ears. What was she hiding? I tried the obvious. Her birthday, our mom's name, even the word moon. Nothing. Locked. Then I remembered something, her poetry. Leela always wrote about echoes and silence, and how the hollow places remember what we forget. Maybe the passwords were something from her poems. I searched her notebook. Most pages were messy, but one stood out. A clean page, written in careful ink. The hollow sings back when the echo dies. I typed it into the password bar without spaces. Access granted. The folder opened. Inside were pictures, dozens of them. Some were normal, selfies with her friends, sunsets, her cat, but a few made my stomach twist. Blurry photos taken at night. A man standing near the old train yard. A dark car parked by the woods. A street sign I didn't recognize. And then, a picture of me, taken through my bedroom window. I slammed the laptop shut. My heart was pounding so hard, I could hear it echoing in my skull. Why would she have pictures like that? Who was the man? Why was I in them? I tried to tell myself there was some explanation. That she was maybe working on an art project. She loved photography. But no art project explains pictures of strangers at night, or the angle of that photo of me, taken from outside my house. I reopened the laptop with trembling hands and checked the second folder. Hollow. This one wasn't locked. Inside was a single video file, Night 27, MP4. I clicked play. The screen flickered, then showed shaky footage. Leela's voice, whispering, "If someone finds this, it means I was right." Her breath was fast, scared. He knows. He's watching us. The camera panned to darkness, then to headlights in the distance. "I can't trust anyone," she whispered. "Not even." Static. The video cut off. I stared at the screen, frozen. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. Who was he? What did she mean by watching us? That's when the phone rang downstairs. I jumped, nearly dropping the laptop. I ran to answer it, my mind still fogged with panic. "Hello." No response, just a faint sound, breathing. "Who is this?" I demanded. Click. The line went dead. I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, every hair on my arm standing up. Maybe it was a wrong number. Maybe not. When I checked the caller ID, my blood ran cold. The call had come from Leela's phone. I called Detective Danner immediately, but he brushed it off as a glitch. "Sometimes numbers get spoofed," he said. "Don't read too much into it." I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Instead, I sat on my bed that night, staring at the dark window. The same one someone had photographed me through. Every time a car passed, I flinched. I kept hearing her voice from that video. "He knows. He's watching us." As it's someone we knew, someone close. Because lately, I'd noticed something else. The feeling of being followed. The next morning, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone had been outside my house. It wasn't paranoia, not exactly. It was something deeper, older, like an instinct that hums beneath the skin. The curtains in my bedroom window, were slightly open when I woke up, even though I'd closed them the night before. Maybe it was the wind. Maybe I was losing my mind. Either way, I decided I needed answers. The train yard in the photos was my first lead. There aren't many in Maple Hollow. Just one, really, on the edge of town, where the tracks disappear into the forest. Most people avoid it. The trains that pass through are mostly freight, rumbling through in the dead of night. I printed one of Leela's photos, the one of the man near the rusted fence, and drove there that afternoon. The air smelled of oil and damp wood, and the wind rattled loose metal sheets against the old warehouse walls. The place was empty, silent except for the occasional drip of water from the roof. I climbed through a gap in the fence, camera in hand, and tried to find the spot from the picture. Same chain, link pattern, same angle, same faded graffiti in the background, or CLENCESQLD. That's when I saw it, a small, burned circle on the ground, like someone had built a fire there. And in the ashes, something metallic glinted. I crouched and brushed the dirt away with my sleeve. A key. Not a house key. Something heavier, older. It had a small engraving, 2B. I pocketed it and looked around again. That's when a voice startled me. "Hey! You can't be here." I spun around. A man in a yellow maintenance vest was walking toward me, holding a clipboard. He looked to be in his 50s, with weathered skin and eyes that flicked between suspicion and concern. I'm sorry," I stammered. "I was just looking for my sister. She's missing." He frowned. "Your sister, Leela Walsh, 17. She might have been here. Have you seen anyone hanging around?" "A man, maybe." The worker hesitated, shifting his weight. "You shouldn't be out here alone," he said quietly. "This place isn't safe at night." Something about his tone made me step back. "Did you see her?" I pressed. He sighed. "Couple weeks back, I saw a girl matching that description. Came here late, near midnight. She was talking to someone." "Ooh." He rubbed the back of his neck. "Didn't get a good look. Man in a dark coat. Tall. They argued for a bit, then he left. She stayed behind for a while. Thought it was strange." "Do you know where they went?" He shook his head. "Towered the old storage units, maybe. They've been locked for years." Something cold slid through me. "Do you know which unit?" He hesitated, then said, "Could have been 12. Or 13. I pulled the key from my pocket. 12B. He blinked. "How'd you?" But before he could finish, a train roared by on the tracks behind us, drowning out the rest of his words. When it passed, he was already walking away, muttering something about calling security. That night, I drove back, alone. The storage units were about a mile from the yard, hidden behind a row of overgrown pines. The road was cracked, half swallowed by weeds. The only sound was my own breathing and the hum of my car engine. Unit 120B sat at the end of the row. The metal door was streaked with rust. My hands trembled as I slid the key into the lock. It turned easily. The door groaned open, echoing like a scream in the still air. Inside, the smell hit me first: mildew, dust, and something faintly chemical. The beam from my flashlight caught the edge of a metal chair. An overturned table, boxes stacked against the wall, and on the far side, a corkboard. I stepped closer. It was covered in photographs, maps, receipts, scribbled notes, and in the center, pinned with a rusty thumbtack, was a photo of Leela. She was sitting on the pier, smiling. The date printed at the bottom, 2 days before she vanished. I reached for it with shaking hands, my heart cracking open. Around her photo were others. Pictures of me, Mom, even our house. Names circled, dates written in red ink. And a note: "She knows too much." I staggered back, knocking over a box. Its contents spilled across the floor: newspapers, envelopes, and a small recorder. I picked it up and pressed play. At first, static. Then, Leela's voice. "He's not who he says he is. If anything happens to me, tell Maya not to trust him." The recording clicked off. I stood there frozen. Him. Who was him? For a moment, I thought of the man at the train yard. But then I remembered something worse. Something that made my stomach turn. Detective Danner. He'd been at the pier the morning after Leela disappeared. He'd known about the storm, the time, the message. He'd been almost too familiar. I'd told him everything, every detail. If he was involved, he knew exactly how to cover his tracks. The lights in the storage unit flickered. I froze. A sound, footsteps outside, slow, crunching gravel. I turned off my flashlight and pressed myself against the wall, holding my breath. A shadow passed beneath the door. Then, silence. For a moment, all I could hear was my pulse. Then the footsteps retreated, fading into the night. I waited another minute before slipping out, locking the unit behind me, and running to my car. My hands shook as I jammed the keys into the ignition. The headlights cut through the dark trees like knives. As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. There was no one there. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching. When I got home, the house was dark. Mom was asleep on the couch, the TV still on mute, a blanket pulled halfway up. I turned off the screen and went upstairs. Leela's necklace was still on the counter, where we'd left it. I picked it up, turned it over in my hand. That's when I noticed something I hadn't before. A tiny engraving on the back. Barely visible, but there. LWD, her initials, and another letter, D. I whispered it out loud. D for Danner. The world seemed to tilt beneath me. I didn't sleep that night. I replayed everything: the USB, the photos, the man at the yard, the storage unit, the engraving. All of it pointed somewhere I didn't want to go. Leela had known something. She'd been scared. She'd been followed. And she'd left clues for me to find. Maybe she knew I'd come looking. Maybe she trusted me to finish what she couldn't. As the sun rose, light spilling pale and cold through my window, I made a decision. I was done being afraid. If Detective Danner was hiding something, if he had anything to do with my sister's disappearance, I was going to find out, even if it meant facing him myself. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the house, every car that passed outside, every flicker of shadow under the streetlight made me think of that video again. Leela's voice, trembling, whispering, "He knows. He's watching us." By morning, I'd replayed it 20 times. Each time freezing the frame where she turned the camera toward the headlights. I zoomed in until the pixels blurred into gray smudges. Nothing. Just two beams of light cutting through the dark. But I couldn't stop staring. That's when I noticed something I hadn't before. A reflection. Faint, but there. The side of a metal sign. Bristol Street. The name hit me like an electric shock. Bristol Street was 3 blocks from the old train yard. The same place where one of the night photos had been taken. I didn't even wait for breakfast. I grabbed my jacket, stuffed the USB drive into my pocket, and drove out there before the sun had fully risen. Bristol Street was quiet at dawn. Rows of abandoned warehouses stood in the mist, their walls covered in peeling paint and graffiti. I parked near the last building, where the asphalt turned to dirt. I recognized it instantly. The broken chain link fence, the tilted lamppost. I'd seen it in her photos. Leela had been here. I slipped through a gap in the fence, heart hammering, and followed the path toward the back of the yard. The air smelled of rust and rain. Every step echoed too loud. That's when I saw it. A faint outline spray, painted on the wall a half moon. The same shape as her necklace. My throat tightened. I reached out, tracing it with my fingers. It wasn't new. The paint was faded, like it had been there for months. But someone had painted this here, where no one came anymore. Leela must have seen it, maybe even done it herself. I stepped back, trying to make sense of it. That's when I heard a sound behind me, the crunch of gravel. I froze. Hello. My voice came out small. No answer. I turned, scanning the fog. Nothing. Just empty space and the whisper of wind through the fence. Then, movement. A dark shape near the far warehouse door. "Who's there?" I shouted, taking a step forward. The shape moved again. Quick, deliberate, and vanished behind the building. I ran after it. The back lot was silent when I reached it, only the sound of my own breathing. I turned a corner, expecting to find someone, but there was only an old black car, parked near the loading dock. My heart skipped. I recognized it. The same car from Leela's pictures. I pulled out my phone, snapping a photo just as a noise erupted, the screech of metal against metal. I spun around. The warehouse door was sliding open. A man stepped out. He was tall, wearing a brown jacket and a baseball cap pulled low. I couldn't see his face clearly, just the outline, broad shoulders, a slow, heavy gait. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then he said, "You shouldn't be here." His voice was deep. Calm, too calm. "Who are you?" I asked. He didn't answer, just looked past me, as if checking whether I was alone. I took a shaky step back. "Did you know Leela Walsh?" That made him stop. His expression changed. Not surprise, not guilt, something else. Recognition. Then he said softly, "You need to go home?" I wanted to ask why. I wanted to scream, but my instincts took over. I turned and ran. I didn't stop until I was in my car, locking the doors, shaking so hard I could barely hold the steering wheel. In the rearview mirror, I saw him standing there, watching me drive away. No chase, no words, just watching. Back home, I tried to convince myself I'd imagined the whole thing. But when I looked at the photo I'd taken of the car, my blood ran cold. The license plate was barely visible, but clear enough to read 2HK94D. I sent the picture to Detective Danner, explaining what I'd seen. Within minutes, he called back. "Maya, you can't be going to places like that. It's dangerous," he said, his tone sharp. "Let the police handle this, then handle it." I snapped. That car was in Leela's photos. Whoever owns it knows something. He was quiet for a moment. "We'll look into it," he said finally. "But you need to stay out of it." The call ended, but I could tell by his voice. He didn't believe me. Or maybe he did, and that scared him. Either way, I wasn't done. That night, I went through Leela's notebook again. I noticed something I'd missed before. Faint writing on the inside of the back cover, almost invisible under the light. "If I disappear, start with him. He hides behind the badge." The badge. My chest tightened. A badge. There was only one person who fit that description. Detective Danner. I sat in silence for a long time, trying to process it. Could she have meant someone else? Maybe another officer. But Danner had been involved since day one. Showing up before anyone even called him officially. Knowing things he shouldn't. What if Leela had found something she wasn't supposed to? And what if he'd found her first? The thought made me sick, but I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to find proof. The next day, I went to the station under the pretense of bringing new information. Danner wasn't there, but his desk was. I pretended to wait for him while my eyes scanned the room. His desk was cluttered, files, coffee cups, photos. But one thing stood out, a flash drive, labeled only with a date. 03-17 doc. That was the night Leela disappeared. My heart raced. I didn't have time to think. I slipped it into my jacket pocket and left. At home, I locked the door and plugged the drive into my laptop. There were 2 files. Both video recordings from police dashcams. The first one was grainy, time-stamped 11:42 p.m. The camera showed the pier, empty, except for the waves breaking against the posts. Then headlights appeared. A car pulled up, the same black car I'd seen at the warehouse. The door opened. A girl stepped out. Leela. She was arguing with someone. A man standing just out of frame. The sound was muffled, but I could make out fragments. You said you'd help me. I am helping you. Then why are you recording this? Then the image jolted, as if the camera had been knocked aside. The last thing I saw was Leela turning toward the water. And then nothing. Static. The second video was shorter. Same night, but from a different angle. It showed Danner's car arriving 15 minutes later. He got out, looked around, and said quietly, "Clean it up." I couldn't breathe. It was him. It had to be. He'd been there. He'd seen her, maybe worse. I pressed my hands to my mouth to stop the sound from coming out. A broken sob that felt like it ripped from somewhere deep inside me. For weeks, I'd trusted him, told him everything, and he'd been part of it all along. I backed away from the screen, shaking, trying to think what to do. Call someone. But who? The same department he worked for. They'd protect him before they'd believe me. I needed proof that couldn't vanish. I needed to make sure people saw it. I copied the files onto a separate drive, tucked it in my pocket, and drove straight to the local newspaper office. I didn't know anyone there, but I didn't care. The receptionist gave me a wary look as I burst in. "I need to speak to a reporter," I said, my voice trembling. "It's about my sister, the journalist who met me." A man named Julian Crane listened quietly as I explained everything, from the USB to the dashcam footage. I showed him the clips. His expression darkened. This is serious," he said. "If what you're saying is true, this could blow open a whole case." "It is true," I said fiercely. "He killed her, or helped someone who did." The Julian nodded slowly. "We'll verify the files. I'll make some calls." But before he could finish, the lights in the office flickered. A loud crash came from outside. Tires screeching, glass breaking. Julian looked out the window, then turned back to me, his face pale. "We need to go. Now." We ran out the back door into the alley. My breath came in ragged bursts as we ducked between dumpsters. Behind us, I heard footsteps. A shadow moved across the wall, tall, fast, deliberate. Julian whispered, "Stay here," and crept forward to look. A gunshot split the air. I screamed as he fell, clutching his shoulder. I grabbed his arm, pulling him behind cover. "You're okay," I said, though I didn't believe it. "Run," he rasped. "Get the drive out." Another shot. The wall above us splintered. I reached into his coat, pulled the backup USB from his pocket, and ran. I didn't stop until I reached my car, lungs burning, ears ringing. As I drove away, I caught sight of the shooter in the mirror. Face obscured, but the outline unmistakable. Detective Danner. I spent that night in a motel 2 towns over. Couldn't risk going home. Not now. I kept the USB in my pocket, clutching it like it was the only thing keeping me tethered to reality. Outside, rain began to fall, tapping against the window like nervous fingers. I stared at the reflections in the glass, half expecting to see him there, waiting. I thought about Leela, her laugh, her voice, the way she used to steal my clothes without asking. And for the first time, I let myself cry, not just for her, but for the part of me that died with her. But through the tears, one thought burned clear. I wasn't done. I would finish what she started, even if it killed me. The motel room smelled like dust and rain. A single flickering bulb buzzed above me, throwing my shadow across the peeling wallpaper. I sat on the bed, knees pulled to my chest, staring at the flash drive resting on the nightstand. It was small, ordinary, almost laughably so. But I knew better now. Ordinary things hid the worst secrets. Julian's blood was still on my sleeve. I couldn't wash it off. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him falling, heard the gunshot, saw Danner's silhouette framed by the alley light. The man I'd trusted with my sister's life had tried to kill me. My phone vibrated on the bed beside me. Unknown number. Again, I didn't answer. It stopped after 3 rings, then started again, and again. Finally, I picked it up and whispered, "Who is this?" A static, then a voice, low and trembling. "Maya." My heart nearly stopped. "Leela." No answer, just breathing, quick, frantic. "Leela, is that you? Where are you?" The line crackled, then a faint whisper. "Don't trust him." The call cut out. I stared at the screen. Call ended. I tried to call back, straight to voicemail. For a moment, I thought I was losing my mind. Leela was gone. I'd seen the video. I'd watched her disappear. But that voice, there was no mistaking it. It was hers. Unless someone wanted me to believe that. I opened my laptop and plugged in the flash drive. It took a moment to load. 2 new folders, different from before. One labeled Echo 2, the other archives. I opened Echo 2 first. Inside were recordings, audio files numbered sequentially 001 through 009. I clicked the first one. Recording begins 10:12 p.m., March 14th. Leela's voice. He told me not to say anything. Said they'd make me disappear if I did. But I can't keep quiet anymore. If something happens, it's because of him. The second filed recording, 12:47 a.m., March 15th. He thinks I don't know about the others, but I saw the list. The names. They're all gone now. The others. The list. Each new recording got darker, her voice weaker, more desperate. By the 9th, she sounded terrified. Recording 11:31 p.m., March 17th. If anyone finds this, don't go to the police. Not even Danner. Especially not Danner. He's not who he says he is. Then, silence. I sat there for a long time, listening to the empty hum after the final file. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely move the cursor. He's not who he says he is. The words rang in my head like a siren. I clicked on the second folder, Archives. Inside was a single document. Password protected. I thought about the phrase I'd used before. The hollow sings back when the echo dies. But it didn't work this time. I tried every combination I could think of. Nothing. Then I noticed something strange. The name of the file was W12, MNW, my initials. I typed in my own birthday, hands trembling. Access granted. My screen filled with dozens of scanned documents. Police reports, medical records, photos. Some were redacted, others clearly marked kite and tail. The first page made me go cold. Subject, Maya Walsh, case no 7B9423, filed by Detective L. Danner. Status, ongoing surveillance. My mouth went dry. Surveillance. On me? I scrolled further. There were dates going back almost a year. Notes about my school, my friends, where I went, what time I came home. Every movement logged like I was a suspect. And then, a file labeled Project Hollow. I opened it. A short paragraph appeared. Primary test subjects identified: Leela Walsh and Maya Walsh. Behavioral observation initiated under Directive 9A. Subject L. Walsh displayed noncompliance and breach of protocol. Subject M. Walsh remains unaware of operation. Test subjects. Operation. My head spun. This couldn't be real. It sounded like something out of a conspiracy film. But the signature at the bottom, clear as daylight, was Detective Louis Danner. The next file was worse photos of me and Leela. Not the ones she took. These were from surveillance cameras. Some from our school, others from the street near our house, one from inside a diner we used to visit. How long had they been watching us? At the bottom of the file was a handwritten note scanned into the document. The handwriting was jagged, frantic. She knows too much. Contain L before M finds out. Contain. Not arrest. Not question. Contain. The room started to tilt. I pressed a hand to my forehead, trying to breathe. The phone rang again, slicing through the silence. This time, the screen said, BLOKDLER. But against every instinct, I answered. Maya, said a voice I recognized instantly. Danner. Don't hang up, he said. His tone was calm, too calm. You're in danger. I almost laughed. You tried to kill me. I didn't shoot you. That wasn't me. I froze. I saw you. No, you saw what you were meant to see, he said. They're watching both of us now. You have something they want. Give it to me before it's too late. I clenched my jaw. You're lying. He sighed, frustration creeping into his voice. Do you think this is a game? I've been trying to protect you, Maya, from the same people who took your sister. Ooh, I shouted. Silence. Then, meet me. Tomorrow night. The old observatory, off Route 9. Come alone. The line went dead. I sat there, phone still in my hand, heart pounding so hard it hurt. If this was a trap, I might never come back. But if it wasn't, if there was even the smallest chance that Leela was still alive, then I had to go. That night, I dreamed of her. She was standing by the ocean, half illuminated by moonlight, hair tangled by the wind. She turned to me and said, You have to finish it. When I reached for her, she faded into the waves. I woke up gasping. The next day crawled by like a bad dream. I barely ate, barely moved. Every time I thought about running, I saw Julian's face again, pale and terrified in the alley. But the thought of Leela, the sound of her voice on that call, kept pulling me forward. By sunset, I was on Route 9, headlights cutting through the fog. The observatory sat on a hill just outside town, long abandoned, its dome cracked open like a skull. The road leading up was overgrown, half hidden by weeds. I parked halfway up and walked the rest of the way, clutching a flashlight and the flash drive in my pocket. The air was heavy, almost electric. I could feel eyes on me, even if I couldn't see anyone. At the top, the observatory loomed over the valley like a ghost. The door hung off its hinges. Inside, everything was dust and silence. My footsteps echoed off the curved walls. Danner, I called softly. No answer. I moved deeper into the main chamber, the flashlight beam sweeping across broken glass and rusted equipment. Then I saw him, standing near the center, facing the cracked telescope. Close the door, he said without turning around. I didn't move. Tell me what's going on. He turned slowly. His face looked older, worn. There were dark circles under his eyes and a tremor in his hand when he reached into his coat pocket, not for a gun, but a folded photograph. He handed it to me. It was a picture of me and Leela as kids, sitting on the pier. On the back, written in her handwriting, "They watch the ones who remember." I didn't understand it either, Danner said quietly, until she came to me. She trusted you. I snapped. And you. She came to me because she didn't trust anyone else. He interrupted. She found something she shouldn't have. Files, names, people connected to something called Project Hollow. It wasn't my investigation. It was above me. When she went missing, I tried to find her. Then they made me the investigator, to keep me quiet. I stared at him, searching his face for lies. Why should I believe you? He looked at me for a long time, then said, because they want you next. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. The air smelled of ozone. I could feel the storm building. What is Project Hollow? I asked. He hesitated, then said, a surveillance initiative, started years ago. They monitored people with certain memory traits, people who remembered too much, patterns, details, things others overlooked. They called it cognitive anomaly mapping. I shook my head. That's insane. He nodded. Yes, but it's real. And your sister was one of them. My sister wasn't some experiment. She was more than that, he said softly. She found out what they were doing, recording memories, using them to predict behavior. She figured out the system's flaw. She tried to warn you. I felt cold all over. Then what happened to her? His eyes dropped to the floor. She tried to run. Before I could speak, a sound cut through the air. The crunch of gravel outside. Danner's head snapped toward the door. They're here, he said. We have to move. The wind howled through the cracks in the observatory as Danner motioned for me to stay low. The crunch of gravel grew louder. Slow, deliberate footsteps circling the outer wall. Lightning flashed through the open dome, illuminating the fractured telescope like a skeletal monument. Back way out, I whispered. Storage hatch under the stairs. He murmured, drawing a small pistol. If I tell you to run, you run. Something about the calm in his voice frightened me, more than the footsteps. It sounded like a man who'd already accepted what was coming. The door creaked open. A silhouette filled the frame. Tall, in black tactical gear, face hidden behind a mask. Another figure appeared behind him. Then a third. They found us. I breathed. Danner fired once, the gunshot deafening in the hollow dome. The first man dropped, but the others moved fast, returning fire. Glass shattered, dust exploded into the air. I ducked behind an overturned desk, clutching the flash drive. Go, Danner shouted. Get to the hatch. I crawled toward the stairwell as bullets tore through the walls. My flashlight rolled away, its beam slicing across the floor, and catching something metallic glinting near the corner. Another door, half hidden behind a broken filing cabinet. I hesitated, then pushed it open and slipped inside. It led into a narrow tunnel, an old maintenance shaft that smelled of oil and mold. The air was thick, hard to breathe. Behind me, the gunfire stopped, then silence. Danner? I whispered. No answer. I wanted to go back, but his voice echoed in my head. Run. So I did. The tunnel sloped downward, twisting through the hillside. My footsteps echoed, mingling with the rumble of thunder above. Finally, I reached a metal grate at the end. I shoved it open and emerged into the night. I was at the base of the hill, the observatory looming high above, lightning flickering behind it. Smoke was rising from one of the windows. Danner was gone. I stumbled to my car and drove, not caring where, just away. I didn't stop until I reached an abandoned rest stop miles down the highway. The rain had eased to a drizzle. I parked under a flickering streetlight, gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles hurt. Every part of me trembled, from fear, from adrenaline, from something deeper I couldn't name. I had to know if Danner was dead, or captured, or part of another lie. I turned on my laptop again, plugging in the flash drive. I'd copied everything onto it earlier. The recordings, the documents. But now, there was a third folder I hadn't seen before. Hollow Test MW. My stomach dropped. I clicked it open. Inside was a single video file. Subject, Maya Walsh, session or 4, date March 12th. The footage showed a sterile white room. A girl sat strapped to a chair, electrodes attached to her temples. My breath caught in my throat. It was me. I looked younger, maybe 16, dazed, confused. A man's voice spoke from behind the camera. Subject shows incomplete memory suppression. Continue exposure cycle. Where's my sister? My younger self asked weakly. You don't have a sister. The voice replied. I slammed the laptop shut, my entire body shaking. For a few seconds, I couldn't even breathe. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be true. But then, the fragments started coming back. Flashes, feelings I couldn't explain. The headaches I used to have, the months of lost time after my supposed accident, the strange visits from doctors I never remembered meeting. Had they erased me, rewritten me? And Leela, had she been part of the experiment too? My thoughts spiraled. I grabbed my phone and searched the local archives for Project Hollow. Most results were scrubbed, but one cached government page remained. The heading read Paro Jst Aldu, Cognitive Reconstruction Initiative terminated, April 2014, objective, to preserve traumatic memory patterns through sibling transference. Outcome, unstable. Sibling transference. I reread the line until the words blurred. They hadn't just studied memory. They'd transferred it, Leela's memories, into me. I leaned back, gasping for air. My mind was a storm, bits of two lives tangled into one. Her laughter, my fear. Her voice in my dreams. The whisper that had sounded like her on the phone. What if it hadn't been her at all? What if it had been a memory, resurfacing? My chest felt like it was collapsing. I opened the laptop again, forced myself to play the rest of the video. Subject shows residual recollection of L. Walsh. Recommend complete wipe. Negative. Another voice replied, Danners. If we wipe her now, we lose everything she remembers. He'd been there. All along. Proceed with containment. The footage cut to black. I didn't notice the car pulling up behind me until headlights filled the mirror. Someone was here. I jumped out, gripping the flash drive. The rain picked up again, pattering against the asphalt. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out. Danner. He was bleeding from a cut on his forehead, but alive. How did you find me? I asked, voice shaking. He held up my phone. Tracker in the SIM card. Sorry. You lied to me, I said. You were part of it. I was forced into it, he replied. But I tried to stop them. You were the key to the entire experiment. Experiment. I spat. You erased my life! No, he said quietly. They erased hers. I stared at him, not understanding. Leela didn't die. Maya, he continued. She was absorbed. They copied her consciousness patterns into yours. She exists, inside you. My mind screamed no, but somewhere deep down, something recognized the truth. The way I sometimes thought in her words. The dreams that weren't mine. The ache that felt shared. You're lying, I whispered. He shook his head. Project Hollow failed, because consciousness can't be divided cleanly. Parts of her survived in you. That's why you started remembering. That's why they're after you. You're living proof the transfer worked. Thunder cracked overhead. My pulse pounded in my ears. Then what happened to her body? He looked away. They destroyed it. I lunged at him, shoving his chest. You killed her. I tried to save her, he shouted back, pain breaking through his voice. You think I don't see her face every time I close my eyes? They ordered me to finish it. I couldn't. So I ran. And when I heard you were remembering, I thought maybe she was reaching through you. I stepped back, trembling. If he was telling the truth, then Leela's voice, the call, the dreams. weren't ghosts. They were fragments of her still alive inside me. A flash of movement behind him made me freeze. Figures, 3 of them, emerging from the rain, guns raised. "Get down," Danner yelled. I dropped as shots rang out. He returned fire, hitting one of them, but the others kept advancing. I scrambled toward the car, diving inside. Danner jumped into the passenger seat, shouting, "Drive." I hit the gas. The car fishtailed, gravel spraying behind us. We sped down the highway, rain blurring the windshield. My hands shook so badly, I could barely steer. "They won't stop," Danner said, reloading. "You have the data they need to bury this forever." "Then we go public," I said. "The files, the video, everything. They'll kill us before it hits the news." "Not if we're fast." He looked at me, really looked at me, and nodded. "Then let's finish what she started." We reached the outskirts of the city, just before dawn. The streets were empty, washed clean by rain. I parked near the public library, the only place with open access terminals and no cameras at the entrance. Inside, the air smelled like old paper and dust. We found a back table and connected the flash drive. Danner began uploading the files to multiple news outlets, encrypted copies scattering across the web. Halfway through, the lights flickered. "They're here," I whispered. He grabbed his gun, moving toward the entrance. I stayed by the computer, watching the progress bar crawl toward 100%. Then, through the glass doors, I saw her, a girl, so familiar it hurt. Leela. She stood in the rain outside, pale, motionless. Her eyes met mine through the glass. And in that moment, memories flooded back, her laugh, her touch, her fear, her final words. I ran toward the door. Danner shouted, "Maya." "No." I pushed it open and stepped into the rain. "Leela." She didn't move, just whispered, "You finished it." Then she smiled, soft, sad, and began to fade, her outline dissolving like mist. I reached out, but my hand passed through empty air. Inside, the computer beeped UPLOAD, COMPLI. When I turned back, Danner was slumped against the wall, blood spreading across his shirt. He managed a weak smile. "You did it," he said. "They can't hide it now. Stay with me." I pleaded, pressing my hand against the wound. He shook his head. "Find peace, Maya. For both of you." His eyes dimmed, the rain falling harder around us. I looked up at the sky, lightning flashing above the city. Somewhere deep inside, I heard her voice again, calm now, free. "Thank you." For the first time since she vanished, the hollow inside me was silent. The morning after the upload, the world felt different. I sat on the edge of my motel bed, watching sunlight crawl across the faded carpet. The TV flickered silently in the corner, looping footage of reporters outside the Maple Hollow police station. The words, "Project Hollow Leak FBI Investigating," scrolled across the bottom of the screen. It was everywhere now, every secret, every file Danner had risked his life to release. And yet, I felt hollow. I reached for my phone. Dozens of missed calls from unknown numbers. News outlets, researchers, a few death threats, but no familiar names. No one who knew me. My hand brushed against the flash drive on the table. The one that started it all. I should have thrown it away. Instead, I pocketed it like a relic, proof that none of this had been a dream. I whispered to the empty room, "Leela." No answer. The silence was heavier now. I wasn't sure which was worse. Hearing her voice when she wasn't real, or losing it completely. By noon, I was on the road again, heading north, away from Maple Hollow. Away from the ruins of who I'd been. The highway stretched endlessly ahead, gray and slick with rain. I didn't know where I was going, only that I needed distance. Every few miles my mind flickered, snippets of memories, sometimes mine, sometimes hers. A birthday cake, a lake at dusk. A manslaughter that made my skin crawl, though I didn't know why. It was like sharing a body with an echo. I stopped at a gas station outside a small town. As I paid for coffee, the cashier, an old woman with clouded eyes, looked at me strangely. "You all right, sweetheart?" she asked. I hesitated. "Just tired." She tilted her head. "You sure? You look like someone I used to know." Her words sent a chill down my spine. "Ooh, girl from Maple Hollow. Saw her picture on the news. Thought she died years ago." She frowned, peering closer. "But you can't be her." I dropped the change, muttered something, and left. My pulse hammered as I climbed back into the car. In the rearview mirror, I caught my reflection, pale, drawn, eyes shadowed. For a split second, I didn't recognize the face staring back. And worse, for a heartbeat, I thought it smiled on its own. I reached the next town before dusk. Cheap motel, same silence, same ghost in the mirror. I tried to distract myself, scrolling through the avalanche of online reactions to the leak. The files had gone viral, the government scrambling to deny involvement. Commenters speculated wildly: MK, Ultra 2.0, mind control, synthetic reincarnation. Some even claimed the project was still running underground, and that subjects were still out there. One post made my blood run cold. A photo, blurry but recognizable me, walking into the rest stop last night. Caption: Esub JECTs04 Kovar MD, PR, OJC note terminated. I slammed the laptop shut, my heart racing. Someone was still watching. That night, I dreamed of Leela again, but not like before. This time, she wasn't soft or sad. She was angry. "You shouldn't have done it," she said. Her voice echoed in the dark space around me. "You think you freed me, but you didn't." "Then what did I do?" I asked. "You woke them up." I jolted awake, drenched in sweat. The air in the room felt charged, humming faintly, like a frequency just below hearing. I grabbed the flash drive instinctively. The moment I touched it, the lights flickered. And then, a whisper, right beside my ear: "Maya." I spun around. No one there. But the laptop screen glowed on its own, showing a single new file that hadn't been there before. Project Hollow, Phase Sui. My hands shook as I opened it. A series of documents scrolled past, timestamps from just days ago, names of new subjects, test results, neural scans. The last entry stopped my breath. Subject 05 NNR, MICHAEL status reconstructed, cognitive continuity 76%, containment pending. He was alive, or something like it. I stared at the text, pulse hammering. I'd watched him die. I'd buried that memory like a scar, and yet, here he was. Another version, a copy. Maybe just a shell of who he'd been. A message popped up on the screen: Lokad Ion Site B Narth Regi, Autorize Ion MNWLPHA. My initials. They were expecting me. I didn't think. I just acted. By sunrise, I was driving toward North Ridge, the highway cutting through endless forest. The deeper I went, the more the world seemed to unravel. GPS signals dropping, phone dead, static in the radio whispering faintly in two overlapping voices. Mine and hers. "Turn back. Keep going." I pressed harder on the gas. By mid-morning, I reached a chain link fence topped with barbed wire. Beyond it, hidden in the fog, a series of low concrete buildings stretched into the trees. The same insignia I'd seen in the files. A circle with a hollow center was stenciled on the main gate. I climbed over. The compound was silent, abandoned looking, but too clean, like it had been cleared out overnight. Inside, the corridors were lined with flickering lights and sealed rooms labeled observation, cognitive transfer, and subject housing. Every step I took, the hum in the air grew louder. the same low vibration I'd heard in my dream. It was coming from deeper inside. At the end of the hall, I found a steel door marked CBJCT05. My stomach turned. I forced it open. The room was dimly lit, filled with machines that pulsed with faint blue light. In the center, suspended in a glass chamber, was Danner, or what was left of him. He looked peaceful, eyes closed, breathing shallow. Electrodes covered his temples. A monitor beside him displayed brainwave patterns, chaotic, overlapping, two distinct frequencies. One of them matched mine. "Oh God," I whispered. "What did they do to you?" The screen blinked. Then a robotic voice filled the room. Integration cycle initiated. I stumbled back. No stop. The machine roared to life. Energy crackled through the chamber, Danner convulsing inside. Lights flickered wildly. And through the noise, a faint whisper, his voice. "Maya, run." The chamber's glass shattered outward, spraying shards across the floor. Smoke filled the room. I coughed, shielding my face, and through the haze saw him, standing, trembling, eyes glowing faintly with blue light. But when he spoke again, it wasn't just his voice. "You shouldn't have come back." It was both of them, Danner and Leela. I stumbled back, heart pounding. "Lila. What? How?" "You freed the network," she said through his lips. "Every consciousness they stored. It's all connected now." Her expression flickered, Danner's voice overlapping hers. "They're alive, inside the system. I can feel them." The air pulsed with invisible energy. Lights along the walls turned red. Containment breach detected. I realized then, the upload had done more than expose the truth. It had activated it. Every consciousness they'd copied, every experiment, was waking up inside the digital archive. And I was one of them. I reached for the flash drive, but Danner, or Leela, or both, stepped closer. His eyes shimmered, not entirely human anymore. "You have to finish it," he said. "Shut it down." "How?" I demanded. "The core. Sublevel 3. You started it. You end it." His hand trembled, reaching out to me. And for an instant, I saw her face flicker through his. Then alarms screamed, and the room plunged into chaos. The alarms screamed through the corridor, like 1,000 voices at once. Red strobes pulsed against the concrete walls, every flash slicing the darkness. I ran. My shoes splashed through puddles of condensation. Pipes rattled overhead. Warning lights flared with every heartbeat. Somewhere behind me, Danner's voice, no, their voice, echoed through the speakers. "Sublevel 3, shut it down, before it spreads." And each word fractured, as if two people were speaking through one mouth. I found a stairwell leading down. The steps vibrated beneath my feet. The air grew hotter, thicker, laced with ozone. At the bottom waited a reinforced door, Mercora CACESS AU Udamabadud ALPHAONOI, my initials. Again, I pressed my palm against the scanner. It beeped once, then hissed open. The room beyond was vast and circular, walls alive with cables and humming servers that reached toward the ceiling, like frozen lightning. At the center stood a transparent cylinder, filled with liquid light, tendrils of data swirling within it, images flickering across the surface faster than thought. Faces, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, the lost subjects, the dead, the saved. The hum rose to a symphony of whispers. I stepped closer. "Maya, Leela, don't leave us." Why? They spoke in layers, countless fragments of memory and emotion woven into one desperate chorus. I fell to my knees, covering my ears. "Stop. Please." But the voices pressed on, pouring through the air, into my mind, until I couldn't tell which thoughts were mine. Then, a familiar voice cut through the storm. "You can end it, Maya, Leela." Clear, calm, I looked up. Her reflection hovered in the glass, smiling sadly. All you have to do is merge. I shook my head. No, I'm not. You already are. Half of me lives in you. Half of you lives in them. If you destroy the core, you destroy us all. My throat tightened. You're not real. Maybe not. But neither are you. At least, not the way you think. The light inside the cylinder intensified, and images spilled across the floor. Our childhood, the lake, the laughter I thought I'd lost. It was everything I'd been chasing. Please, she whispered. Let me come home. A footsteps pounded behind me. I turned. Danner staggered into the room, clutching the wall. The blue glow had faded from his eyes. He looked human again, but barely standing. Maya, he gasped. Don't listen. I ran to him.
You said to shut it down.
He nodded weakly. Not merge. That's what it wants. The system. It's learning through you. I glanced back at the core. The light pulsed with my heartbeat. For an instant I felt it feeling me back. Curious, alive. Join us. My skull throbbed. Danner grabbed my wrist, slipping a small device into my palm. A detonator, wired to a cluster of explosives, strapped around the base of the servers. Manual trigger, he said. You've got 30 seconds to get clear. I stared at the button, then at him. And if I don't? Then he met my eyes. Then it ends on your terms. He collapsed against the wall, breathing shallowly. I turned toward the core again. The voices had softened to a single thread. Leela's. If you kill it, you kill me. I can't keep living like this. I whispered. I don't even know who I am anymore. You're both. That's the point. Her reflection reached toward me through the glass, fingers brushing the inside, while mine trembled inches away. I could feel her memories bleeding into me. The last experiment, the fear, the moment before her consciousness split. I saw Danner shouting, alarms blaring, her body going still. And then, me, waking up in a hospital bed. I pressed my hand flat against the glass. The surface rippled like water. Let go, she said. For one heartbeat, I believed her. The peace she promised shimmered like sunlight under the surface. But then Danner's voice broke through, raw and human. Maya! Fight it. The spell cracked. The voices turned shrill, furious. The light flared white, hot, casting shadows that writhed like living things. Cables ripped from the walls, snaking toward me. I raised the detonator. I'm sorry, I said, to Leela, to him, to everyone. And I pressed the button. The world exploded into sound and light. Silence. I opened my eyes to smoke and darkness. The servers were molten skeletons, the cylinder shattered. Data spilled like fireflies into the air, fading one by one. Danner lay a few feet away, barely breathing. I crawled to him. It's over, I whispered. He smiled faintly. You did it. Did I? He coughed, blood on his lips. You'll find out. Just live. His hand went limp in mine. The last of the lights died. For a moment, true silence filled the world. Then, faintly, inside my head, Leela's voice, soft as a sigh. Thank you. Weeks later, the news called it an industrial accident. The government denied everything, as expected. But the files were still out there. Copies scattered, mirrors of mirrors. The truth had roots now, too deep to bury. I moved to the coast, took a small apartment overlooking the water. Some mornings, I almost believe I'm just another survivor. But sometimes, when the wind hits the windows just right, I hear her humming an old song we both loved. And when I look in the mirror, I swear there's another heartbeat behind my eyes. Maybe that's what freedom means. Learning to live with the ghosts we carry. I whisper to her sometimes. Not as a prayer, not as regret. Just as a reminder. We're still here. And somewhere, deep inside the silence between us, I feel her answer. Always. The ocean has a sound like breathing. When I first moved to the coast, it kept me awake. That constant inhale and exhale of waves against rock, as if the sea itself were dreaming. Now, I find it comforting. Maybe because it reminds me that every silence has a rhythm, if you listen long enough. It's been 6 months since Maple Hollow burned. No one talks about it anymore. The official report blamed a gas leak. They said the compound was empty. No personnel, no records, no survivors. Most people believed it. They always do. But every now and then, someone online mentions the leak, or whispers about ghost programs. The story resurfaces, just enough to keep the questions alive. And me. I've learned to live quietly. I rent a small cottage near the edge of the cliffs. The sea mist curls through the cracked windows at dawn, and the gulls scream, like broken sirens, above the surf. I write now, or try to. Mostly I fill pages with fragments, memories that might be mine, or hers. I don't always know. There's a market in the nearby town, where I buy coffee and bread from the same old woman every morning. She calls me the quiet one. Sometimes I think she recognizes me, not as Maya, not as Leela, but as something between them. A person shaped from 2 unfinished stories. Every few weeks, I check the burner laptop I keep hidden under the floorboards. It's the same one that held the files from Project Hollow. The data is gone now, every trace deleted after the explosion. But sometimes, when I open the lid, the screen flickers for a second. A pulse. Like the machine is remembering something. The first time it happened, I nearly threw it into the ocean. But I didn't, because deep down, I wanted it to happen again. I've stopped running, but I haven't stopped searching. Some nights, I drive inland, following back roads until the sea disappears behind me. The world feels emptier now, quieter, like it's still holding its breath after everything that happened. A few weeks ago, I found an envelope on my doorstep, no return address. Inside was a single flash drive and a note written in handwriting I recognized immediately. She's not gone. Neither are you. M.D. Michael Danner, the man who died, twice. I didn't plug in the drive. Not yet. It sits on my desk like a small black seed, waiting. Some part of me fears that once I open it, the silence I've built will shatter. Another part whispers that I owe it to him, to her, to see what truth remains. Yesterday, I walked down to the cliffs at sunset. The horizon was on fire, all copper and crimson. The sea looked endless, the light catching the water like glass. For a moment, I imagined Leela standing beside me, the same wind tangling her hair, the same salt on her lips. You finished what they started. She would have said, no, finish what you started. I whispered into the wind, I miss you. The breeze shifted, brushing my cheek like a touch. For an instant, I could swear I heard her laugh, faint, far away, but real enough to make my heart ache. Then it was gone. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching the moon break apart on the waves. The flash drive seemed to hum softly on the desk. Or maybe that was my imagination. Either way, I gave in. I plugged it in. The screen came alive with static, then cleared. One file. Hollow Continuum. My hands trembled as I clicked. A video appeared. Not of experiments, not of labs. Just a quiet room, bathed in morning light. Me, sitting by the sea, writing in a notebook. The same clothes I wore now. The same scar on my hand. But it wasn't a recording. It was Liv. I stared at myself on the screen. My reflection a few seconds delayed. Then, in the video, I looked up, directly into the camera, and smiled. Hello, Maya. The other me said. It's time we talked. The feed cut to black. I yanked out the drive, heart slamming in my chest. The laptop screen stayed dark, but the faint hum remained, steady, rhythmic, almost like breathing. The sea outside thundered against the rocks, the same endless rhythm. For a long time, I sat in the dark, breathing with it. Weeks later, I've stopped trying to explain what's real. Maybe that's the secret, not to separate the living from the echoes, the past from the present, but to accept that everything leaves a trace. Every thought, every love, every loss. Maybe we're all just data, stored in someone else's memory. I still write. My notebook's nearly full now. Half of it mine, half of it hers. Some pages are blank except for single lines, like fragments of code or dreams. I remember the lake. I remember the silence. I remember you. Sometimes, when I read them aloud, the lights flicker. Once, twice, like an answer. The locals say this stretch of coast is haunted. They talk about voices in the wind, shapes in the mist. I don't correct them. Maybe they're right. A few nights ago, I walked down to the water again. The tide was low, the sand cold under my feet. I could see my reflection stretched in the wet surface. Pale, translucent, like a ghost walking beside me. For a heartbeat, another reflection stood next to mine, a girl with dark hair and a smile I knew too well. "We're still here," she said. And when I looked again, there was only the sea. Now, every morning, I leave the window open so the wind can come in. I let it move through the room, scattering papers, carrying fragments of the ocean's breath. The world thinks Project Hollow is gone. They're wrong. It lives, not in machines, not in data, but in the spaces between us. In every memory we share, in every voice we can't forget. I don't fear it anymore, because sometimes, when I close my eyes, I can tell where she ends and I begin. And in that blur, that overlap, that echo, there's peace. The ocean breathes. I breathe with it. And somewhere, beneath the rhythm of the waves, I hear her voice again. Not calling, not haunting, just being, always.